Hello and welcome. My name is Dr. Jeremie, and today we're going to learn how to use the scale tool. And our objective is to learn how to analyze a historical moment, event, or period using the scale tool. The tool itself has 4 steps. The first step is contextualization. The second step is spatial scale. The third step is temporal scale. And the fourth step is historical understanding. So the reason that we would ask students to use this tool is so that they can really get not only a direct understanding of an event, but they'll also see the multiple levels and layers of an event and how a historical moment doesn't only affect potentially like one group of people, it could have impact across regions, across spatial scale, and we'll talk about that in a bit, and also temporal scale. So it's not something that could only happens in that moment, it has impacts and consequences beyond that. And so we really will use this tool to get students to have a really good multi-layered understanding of an event. For step one, we're going to ask students to really contextualize the historical moment. So one, what is the name of the event? You may wish to use a topic that you're studying. For example, maybe you're doing decolonization or the age of exploration, or you're doing any of the world wars. And then what geographic location or locations did this event occur in? To give students already, to have them already start thinking about geographic spatial scale. Where were things happening? And then who are the key players in this event? Who are we going to be talking about? Who are we studying? Who potentially started or were impacted or were fighting? So I would have students put all of that in that question. And then what historical circumstances led to this event? So this event did not pop out anywhere. What historical influences or themes or moments or even direct moment impacted and led to this event? So that's going to be good to have students start thinking about, well, things don't happen in isolation. Something came before this. So having students start to contextualize the historical moment really gets them to start thinking about where we are using this historical moment as a period of study. Our next step is going to be to look at the spatial scale. So for this, we're going to ask students to record how the historical moment affected not only individuals, but we're also going to ask them to look bigger too. So individuals is the smaller, closer, intimate level of the spatial scale. And then we're going to keep moving into the broader spatial scale. So we'll start with individuals. Then we'd ask students to look at, well, then how did this moment influence local community or a nation? And then even bigger, how does this moment impact a region? So we'd give them some examples such as Southeast Asia or Europe. And then we ask students to go even further and look at the bigger picture. How does this historical moment impact and affect the world? What we would definitely help students do here, we could have them use prior knowledge, but giving them documents would be very helpful here because then they could actually grasp evidence to put into each of these categories. So once students have looked at, well, how this impacts things spatially and how people and nations and even the world was impacted by this, then we're going to ask students to shift gears a little bit and look at this event temporally. So we want students to then look at, ideally, once again, I would use some documents. What were the consequences of the historical moment? And we're not only ask them to look at just when the event happened, but we also want them to, once again, think very intimately and small, and then expand their thinking and analysis. So we want them to look immediately, well, what happened as soon as this event happened? And then short term, soon after, maybe a couple of months or even like a short span of years. What happened because of this moment? And then we also wanted to think, well, even bigger. What happened far out after this event? What impact or consequences does this event have? This tends to give students a pause to think in such big temporal scales. So you may wish to break it down even further when you're doing this step of the tool, because we are asking them to look at time in a way that potentially they have not done before. So when we're looking at temporal scale, another way you could tell them that we're doing it is that we're zooming in, right? That intimate view, and then we're going to zoom out. So we're going to look at the zoom in, which is occurring right now, that immediate, and then we're going to start zooming out a little bit more to look at just a short period of time, and then that we're going to look at that bigger picture, that we're completely zooming out, and we're going to look at, well, over a long period of time, what was the impact and consequence of this historical moment? So this might be a good visual to give to students just to get them to think of time in this manner. And now that they've finished steps 1, 2, and 3, and they have now basically used documents and categorized events in spatial and temporal scale, now it's time to bring it all together. And one way to do that, to form that historical understanding, is to have students use their steps and think about, well, how does thinking about scale, how does thinking about how this historical moment impacted people in either individually or even a bigger, broader sense? And how does thinking of this historical moment in temporal scale, how does it help us better understand this historical moment? And this is definitely a good place to have students really start to form their own analyses and historical understanding. I hope you use this tool in your classroom, and I hope that you found this video helpful. Have a great one.